How's it going, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Country Streak. Last week on Twitch, my chat and I got the new world record diverse world country streak of 280. It was an absolutely insane attempt. That run took us over 2 hours, so I'm going to be splitting it into 3 different parts. In this first episode, we're going to take a look at the first 100 countries of this country streak. So I'm going to provide some post-commentary for this video and sort of walk through the thought process for each round, since in a lot of these games, the chat and I just sort of breezed through each location and didn't really talk about why we were guessing there. So I'm going to explain every single round as best as I can in this video. There's going to be some cuts in here since for some rounds it took us a long time to decide, but I'm going to keep this short and concise, show you guys the important stuff, talk about the important stuff, and then keep on moving. So without any further ado, let's get into this, and I hope you guys enjoy. Getting into the first location here, we had lots of hedgerows and rolling green hills. We also had the English language on that sign, as well as Generation 2 coverage, all things very common in the UK. Round 2 had Spanish on that building. There were also those electricity poles, which seemed to be of the hexagonal variety. You see those a lot in Mexico. Round 3, we had again Generation 2 camera coverage. That combined with the sort of architecture and trees and everything that we were looking at here definitely reminded us of Germany. Germany is stuck in Generation 2 coverage, plus this architecture made it quite distinct for us, and so we were happy to guess Germany. In round 4, we had architecture and landscape reminding us of the Middle East. We also had a black Google car, and in that part of the world, black car equals Jordan. And for the last round here, we had some bollards, which were of the Danish variety. Got that yellow at the top, as well as the red line circling the very top of it. You see those all over the place in Denmark. Moving into the second game here, we had architecture that is pretty characteristic of the sort of Nordic Scandinavian area. We also had language there which seemed pretty Danish based on the characters that we had. Google car also indicated that Denmark would be rather likely here with that sort of medium-sized antenna. So in the end, chat and I were happy to guess Denmark. In round 7, we had Generation 4 camera coverage. Those signs in the distance that we're looking at seemed pretty Italian, as well as those buildings there to our southwest. All looked rather Italian in nature, so that's where we decided to go. And in round number 8 here, the bridge at first reminded me of the UK with that sort of style of fence. However, there was one big thing that I missed at first, and that is that we were driving on the right, so it could not possibly have been the UK. And then chat and I figured that, well, maybe it's going to be France based on this landscape. Sort of this flat agricultural area in northern France is rather similar to the UK. We also had a sort of water tower that you can see in the distance there off to the left side of the screen. That is something you see in North France a lot in the agricultural areas. They tend to love that style of water tower. So in the end, chat and I figured, well, may as well go France here. Next round here dropped us into somewhere in Eastern Europe. These electricity poles seemed to indicate Hungary. I believe that's what this was, actually. I hope so. But yeah, those electricity poles, that kind of style you see in Hungary, sort of similar ones in Poland and Romania as well. But this specific kind is specific to Hungary. I believe there was a little bit of language as well. Didn't really need to look at that, but the poles were the really big thing here to indicate Hungary. And last round for the second game here, we had a long antenna, plus landscape, plus bollards, which all indicated Australia. Lots of Australia Gen 3 coverage has that really long antenna with a white car, plus the Australian trees and landscape quite distinct in itself. In this location, we had that sort of checkerboard diamond-shaped sign, which you see in Canada a lot. That's a very Canadian sign, a good way to tell it apart from the US as well. In this location, we had Generation 2 coverage, yellow license plates, and that road sign, all indicating Luxembourg. And Luxembourg is another country that is stuck in Generation 2, has lots of yellow license plates as well. In this location, we had language which again indicated somewhere in Scandinavia. And that bicycle sign, as well as the city name, which it indeed said on the sign, all indicates Denmark again. So again, it's sort of Scandinavian round, trying to decide based on the language and the signage there. Round 14, we had a sign for Angkor beer, plus we had Khmer script and driving on the right to differentiate it from Thailand, which drives on the left. So that one was Cambodia. And number 15, we had some sort of Mediterranean-looking mountains and landscape, an Italian-looking license plate. Italy has 2 blue bars on either side of the plate, plus that street sign also seems quite Italian. Italy uses white street signs with the sort of street name in larger font and the road category in a smaller font on the top. So moving on to the next round, here we had very simple car meta. We have that white sort of Jeep, which is found in Uganda. Uganda only has coverage in Kampala and Entebbe, as well as national parks. Here we had some sort of faded camera coverage, which is official. You see that in Alaska, specifically around Anchorage and Fairbanks a lot. Here we had Spanish language, in combination with the sun being in the north, these really tall mountains, and also that electricity pole. We are going to be in Argentina here. Round 19, again we had Generation 2 coverage here. EU-style plates and architecture indicating somewhere in the sort of Baltic-ish area. We also had the Finnish flag there. I didn't notice it at first. It was sort of hiding behind the roof there, but that was indeed the Finnish flag, so we were happy to go Finland on this one. And round number 20, we again had car meta here. The famous Ghana tape. If you have bars on the car and the front right one has tape around the edge of it, you are going to be in Ghana. There is another place that has tape, that is Réunion, but it's in a different location of the car. But front right bar taped is Ghana. Round number 21, we had a .cz domain, which indicates Czechia. This is also wintertime coverage, which Czechia has a fair amount of. So those two things combined, and also the language there, indicated that we were going to be in the Czech Republic. Round number 22 gave us nice and simple car meta again. We had low camera coverage. There's another country that has low camera, that's Switzerland. However, the car is not visible usually in Switzerland. In Japan, it oftentimes is. So if you get that with car visible, it's going to be Japan. Here we had a very distinct landscape of very green, lush mountains, as well as a white Google car. This is going to be Lesotho. We were trying to look for the dam that it could have been since we were right next to one, but didn't choose the right one. I think in the end we just sent it. But this kind of landscape plus Google car is going to be Lesotho. Round 24 seemed to be the United States based on the sort of road lines, the sort of language and architectural style we had as well. All seems to indicate the US of A. And round 25, a quarter of the way through, here we had some white signs as well as a black Google car, plus the landscape indicating Uruguay. You sort of get this field-looking rolling hills, plus those white signposts. You see those a lot in Uruguay. Good way to tell it apart from Argentina. Argentina can have white signposts sometimes, but they are very, very common in Uruguay. Combined with that sort of landscape, you cannot go wrong. So we're a quarter of the way through the run now, at least for this video. Here we had sort of poles that seemed Mexican again, that sort of hexagonal shape. Bollards as well as Corona beer advertised, all indicates Mexico as well. Round 27, the sort of road and style of sign there indicated Brazil. Brazil has lots of red soil and black backs of their signs as well. A good way to tell it apart from other South American countries or similar in Latin America. In round 28, the electricity poles plus the landscape indicated Cambodia. Those poles can look kind of similar to Brazil, and I believe Cambodia has other varieties as well, but that in combination with the very distinct architecture and landscape will indicate Cambodia. In this round, it looked a lot like Botswana to start, with the sun in the north, the sort of road lines we had, and architecture as well. Sort of looks like South Africa, but much more shrub-like and dry. It can be sometimes tricky, especially in parts of South Africa near the border, but that location was very distinctly Botswanan. And round number 30 here, we had similar poles again to Hungary. However, this time they're painted white at the bottom, which is a very, very Romanian thing to do. They're also sort of wider than the Hungarian poles as well. So with that, we are 30 countries into this part of the run. Moving on to the next game. Here we had low cam once again, plus electricity poles, which were Japanese. That one is an instant send for me most of the time, so we kind of brushed through that one. Here we had a black Google car again. We also had a unique sort of camera meta here. The camera is fogged up, and that is a Uruguayan thing. I believe near the coast is where you see it the most. Don't quote me on that. I was not aware of this meta before chat pointed it out to me in this run, but it seems to hold up pretty well. You can see Southby saying that in chat right now, so it seems to work out pretty well. We did go for Uruguay testing out the meta, and it did work. Round 33 here, we had lots of bollards near the intersection, which is a very Russian thing. We also had Russian-looking architecture and electricity poles as well, so all indicating somewhere in the huge country of Russia. I tried to go for a nice landscape guess, and it actually worked out. That sort of architecture landscape you see near Kazakhstan, Mongolia, pretty far east. In this location, we were in Europe here once again. Language, again, indicated somewhere in the sort of Nordic area. Seemed more Swedish this time with the kinds of characters we had, so we went for Sweden. And round 35, this time we had some interesting bollards that I hadn't really seen before, a black Google car as well, and this very dry sort of landscape. I wasn't too sure what this was going to be, but thanks to chat, we did figure out that it was going to be Peru. Peru does have quite a lot of coverage that uses a black car, and also that signpost is black and white striped. That is a very Peruvian thing as well. A lot of times the signpost is much more chunky than that and sort of square-shaped, but still that design you see in Peru quite a lot. Next round, we had Gen 4 coverage. Here, I was absolutely not sure at all. I have chat to thank for this one. They seemed to think it was Bulgaria, based on the sort of trees that we had. This, I would never have even thought to guess Bulgaria, so huge thanks to chat for that one. But I guess that sort of tree landscape you see, as well as the Gen 4. Bulgaria does have some Gen 4. Round number 37, we had more Generation 4 coverage here, sort of combined with the English language as well as the style of those homes. We were thinking Ireland. Ireland has a lot of white-colored houses and very dark roofs. Gen 4 is pretty common there in comparison to the UK as well. Not too much, but it is a more Irish thing in general, but really it was the architecture that did it for us in this round. Number 38, again we had Gen 4 coverage plus Thai language. Thailand is the only country in that part of the world that has Gen 4, at least Cambodia does not have it. Here we had a black Google car with a short antenna, which is found in Cambodia. I almost forgot that for this round, but it is a pretty good method of guessing Cambodia. If you don't have things like the yellow license plates or the Colombian cross on the back of their signs, black car with short antenna, good way to find it as well. And round number 40 here, another deserty landscape with black car, is going to be Jordan if you're in the Middle East somewhere. Next round here, we had more Generation 4 English-style signs, as well as that sort of rock wall. Seemed to indicate Ireland once again. Different from the UK in just sort of the way it looks with its walls and its sort of landscape. The UK is more so with hedgerows and things like that. Not so many rock walls. You do see them there as well, but Ireland just loves them for some reason. Next round here, we had more Spanish on the buildings. Car seemed almost like it was black, so I was thinking Peru here. Peru also has lots of tuk-tuks in comparison to other South American countries, so if you see a good number of tuk-tuks around and it looks vaguely Peruvian, you can pretty safely guess there most of the time. Next up, we had classic French bollards, those really thick circular ones with a sort of gray or a red stripe around at the top. Here we had car meta, we had bars on the car plus rifts in the sky. That is something you see in Senegal. And last round for this game, again we had Australian road markings, bollards, and trees. So a nice easy Australia send for us to get us through round 45. Jumping into round 46, again we had low cam with visible car, easy Japan send whenever you get one of those. Very, very awesome to always get Japan rounds because it helps you get through them and keep on moving to the next round. So low cam, visible car will be Japan. Here we had a agricultural region with lots of dry mountains around, sun in the north indicating that we'd be in the southern hemisphere. Apparently, according to chat, the electricity pole here was also Peruvian. I don't know what Peruvian poles look like, but take the word for it, I guess. It's Peru. So that landscape and the pole indicates Peru. Round 48, again we had Gen 4 coverage. We also had English language, and the bollards here also indicated Wyoming. That sort of style with circles on them. You get the yellow ones near junctions, but they can be white just along roads. Those are Wyoming specific for whatever reason. Here we had lots of Chinese characters and road signs as well, indicating that we'd be in Taiwan. And round number 50, the halfway point for this video, again we had Gen 4 coverage. Language there seemed to indicate either Malaysia or Indonesia. We were checking all the different clues, looked at the electricity pole, and it had a black sticker on it. You see that in Malaysia a lot. Within the scope of Malaysia, that's pretty common on the peninsular side. Gen 4 is also exclusively found on the peninsula, if I'm not mistaken. So those two things combined let us guess on that side of the country. So with that, we are halfway through for this video. We got 50 more countries to go, and then of course, as I said, we're going to have parts 2 and 3, looking at 90 countries each, finishing out the last 2/3 of this run. Alright, moving into round 51 here. We had a short antenna on the car, black backs of signs, so we are going to be in Brazil here. Again, that sort of red soil as well, you see that so much in Brazil. In this location, we had yellow plates combined with the sort of architecture and palm trees and things, plus the Hebrew script. We are going to be in Israel. So yellow plates are very common in Israel. Round 53 here, we had a long antenna on the car, architecture, landscape, pipes and things also indicating Russia. Pipes you see a lot in the interior of places like Siberia and Eastern Russia. Lots of oil pipelines and things happening up there. Plus we had Cyrillic language as well. This gave us a close scare because it was very close to Ukraine. Sometimes you can confuse this, but thankfully it was actually Russia. Here again we had that short antenna, reddish looking soil. Electricity pole was kind of far away but seemed sort of Brazilian. And then also the green-backed sign was a little bit interesting, but everything here sort of suggested that we would be in Brazil once again. And round number 55, here we had lots of palm trees and, of course, an American flag. So based on the architecture, palm trees, very flat, no front plates. I went for Florida. I think I guessed Fort Myers. Yeah, there we go. It's always tough to narrow down the right metro area in Florida, but as long as it's Florida and as long as it's the US, it's all good for Country Streak. So that's number 55 done. In this location, we had a South Korean road sign, instant send for me. The South Korean language is distinct, having circles a lot in its characters. In this location, we had Gen 4. Architecture looked quite North American. I thought it might be the US at first. Something felt off, panned around, and there were Canadian flags. So there we go. Thank you, Canadian clutch flags. This location, we had a specific Google car for Bangladesh, as well as the language. Very easy to instantly send Bangladesh as well. Round number 58, again we had a black Google car, sort of a deserty, very mountainous landscape. So all of that suggested to us that we were going to be in Argentina here. This kind of landscape can be a little bit tricky to confuse with Peru, but the architecture is a little bit different. Peru likes to use more brick sort of styles, I believe. So that's a good way to tell it apart from Argentina. And again, also pine trees are more common in Argentina because the climate is more cool. And round number 60 here, we had European-style signs and sort of bollards that indicated somewhere like Croatia or Italy. Landscape here is pretty Croatian, reminiscent of that sort of Adriatic coast. Here I wasn't too sure personally, but just sort of the bollards, landscape, and road markings all combined do indicate Croatia in the end. But I have chat here to thank once again for helping me to get this location. Alright, just 40 more countries to go for this part of the run. Here we had Gen 2 coverage, plus the sort of landscape and road markings. Also, those street signs, township roads, are very specific to Alberta in Canada. Canada also has lots of Gen 2 coverage all throughout the country, in comparison to the US, which has barely any. There we had an American-style county road sign. Here again we had white car, long antenna, white road lines, and again those Australian trees, very distinct. Round 64, here we had some more Spanish. I was trying to see what that seal was. I couldn't really tell, but we had a single yellow line, which is common in Mexico. And that seal does indeed say Mexicanos as well, so we are going to be in Mexico. And round 65, this looks a lot like the US, based on the sort of mountains and landscape we had. Interesting to have an antenna there. Also, U-Haul is an American truck rental company, so that combined with the sort of landscape we had here seemed to indicate somewhere around Yellowstone or Montana-ish areas. And getting into game number 14, I think, if my math is correct. Here we had electricity poles that seemed quite French. Architecture also reminded me of France, especially in the north. So yeah, that combined with those poles indicates France. Round 67, here we had a sign which seemed quite Malaysian. Malaysia has lots of sort of blue-looking signs in comparison to Indonesia, which I believe has more green signs. But plus the white Google car and that sort of landscape, indicative of Borneo landscapes. Here we had car meta, the sort of bars on the car with those mirrors and the sort of tropical landscape, indicates that we're going to be in Guatemala. In round number 69, we again had Gen 4 coverage with North American architecture. Thankfully, we had the US flag visible there. I was trying to figure out which state this would be based on license plates. I think there was a sign that said something about OK. Yeah, there, Ellis OK Tire. I thought that was going to mean we're in Oklahoma, but as you're going to see, that was not the case at all, so very nice bait for Oklahoma. In all fairness, it didn't look anything like Oklahoma, but I went for it anyway, just for the hell of it, and it wasn't there. But it was the US, which is what counts. And round number 70 here, we had lots of white lines, plus language on that sign, I believe was sort of Turkish, but Turkey likes to use white signs. They also have the sort of arrow chevrons, which are red and white. Those are pretty common in Turkey as well. So that indicated to us that we would be somewhere in Turkey. With just 30 more rounds to get through, let's keep going. Here we were in Canada again. Those bollards are specific to Alberta, the black at the top and then a black stripe just below it. In location number 72, we were driving on the right with a white Google car. That license plate is also a variety you see in the Philippines a lot, and in the scope of Southeast Asia, Philippines and Cambodia drive on the right. Good way to tell it apart from somewhere like Indonesia or Malaysia if you're not too sure. Here we had Spanish and very red bricks. Bolivia likes to use red bricks a lot. A good way to tell it apart from Peru if you're not sure. I believe Peru's bricks are more light colored, but Bolivia has a good abundance of that red colored brick. In location number 74, we had Gen 4 coverage again, plus Cyrillic script, so in combination with that, the Gen 4, and also the sort of southern European looking architecture, Bulgaria really had to be the option here. We went for Sofia, but it was Plovdiv, same difference. And around 75% of the way through this video, we had North American looking architecture and roads again here. It was fall time. We weren't sure if this was going to be US or Canada. This is a tricky toss-up to get in country streaks, especially in these more rural locations. They can look very, very similar, so I wasn't too sure. I believe I went for the Northeast here, just based on the landscape and the architecture. And thankfully it was the US. It was actually Michigan, which was interesting to say the least. Wasn't really expecting Michigan out of that location, but fair enough. It's the US and it's all good. Streak is alive. So we are 75% of the way through this video. Here we had French road signs, that sort of white style sign with the D roads in a yellow box. Those are a very French thing. Round 77, here we had a very red soil looking road. Lots of electricity poles around that seemed Cambodian, as well as the Khmer script. Round 78, we had Gen 4 coverage, white road lines, again those very Australian looking trees. The green sign in the distance seemed to be Australian as well. In round 79, we had language which seemed Polish at first. I wanted to double check with some other clues that we could see around. The pole was also Polish. That language was 100% Polish, so I was confident guessing there. And round number 80, we had Gen 4 here again. Language was German, but as I said before, Germany is locked in Generation 2. So if you get Gen 4, it is going to be Austria if you got German as well. That white sign in the distance with the red slash through it is also an Austrian variety of town entry and exit sign as well. Getting into round number 81 here, we had a street sign and a bollard, which looked pretty Finnish, based on their style and the language as well. Finland has lots of Gen 2 coverage in comparison to other nearby nations. None of the Baltic nations have Gen 2, it is just Finland that has it. Sweden has it as well, but again, they have lots more Gen 3. And as well, the language is different, bollards are different, so all of these things combined suggested to us that we would be in Finland. Round 82, we had Gen 3 coverage somewhere in Europe, somewhere probably in the Balkans here. We had blue street signs in the distance, which seemed to be Turkey. Actually, no, we're not in Europe, we're in Turkey. Okay. Again, similar looking areas, but yeah, those blue street signs are very Turkish. And again, here we had Middle Eastern architecture with a black car. Easy Jordan send. Round 84, we had a sort of North American looking forest and road signs and road markings. This can be tricky. Again, Canada, America, toss-up. However, this sort of road reminded me more of Ontario. Ontario has a good amount of winter coverage as well as roads passing through that sort of deciduous pine mixed forest, so a good clue for Ontario there. And round 85, this one was a little bit tricky. Again, so many potential Canada-US toss-ups in this run. Here are the road, signs, fonts, everything could have been either American or Canadian. There was one sign in particular, though, which gave it away for Canada, which I will show here. It's that one in the distance, that green sign, sort of divided. I believe someone in chat said that's indicating different speed limits for different kinds of vehicles. That sort of sign is a Canadian thing. I don't believe you see anything like that in the US, and if you do, it isn't designed that way. But that was the big clue here to set this apart from Canada and the US, so thankfully we had that. If we didn't have it, my god, that would have been a tough location. Those black and yellow sort of striped signs, I've seen a lot in Canada as well. I'm not sure if that's specific to Canada, but those seem to be common near overpasses on highways, so maybe that's something to look out for as well. Alright, we got 15 countries left. Let's get into this on the final few rounds for this video. Here we had a sign plus the sort of soil and agricultural round. Again, that short antenna. All things pointed to South Brazil-ish here. So we were in the state of Goiás. In round 87, here we had Gen 3 coverage, plus a white car, sun in the north. That car, in comparison to other southern hemisphere countries, is usually going to be Chile, plus the sort of landscape as well as architecture indicating Chile. Round 88, again here, similar sort of deal. We had Spanish, we had sun in the north, we had a white Google car, and again that sort of temperate looking landscape indicating Chile. Round number 89 here, we had signs pointing out Kanye and Gaborone, which are cities in Botswana. Again, white Google car and that sort of deserty shrubs looking landscape is a very Botswanan thing. And round number 90 had a long antenna on the car. That sign there, regardless of how funny it was that it's just said sand, the sort of style of language and sign there was indicating Sweden. Sweden has a lot of coverage with that long antenna and a white car. Also the architecture, those red Scandinavian homes, so everything was pointing to Sweden there. We were just having a good laugh over that sign saying sand. Alright, 90% of the way through this part of the run, we here have a sign pointing out some cities that I wasn't too familiar with. Here, chat, I have to thank as well. Signs indicated we were somewhere in Latin America. I wasn't sure on that style, but I believe that is an Ecuadorian style. Ecuador does have a lot of concrete roads as well. They're also one of the countries that has the short antenna in addition. So that's the sort of sign style, concrete roads. Landscape as well, and I'm guessing those cities as well, people recognized as somewhere in Ecuador, but yeah, all signs here pointed to Ecuador. Round 92, we had beautiful Gen 4 coverage. Again, we had those Brazilian poles, so Brazil has lots of mountains near the coasts, especially in the states of Rio and Sao Paulo, places like that, but here we decided to go for that, and it was. Round 93, Gen 3 coverage, we had bollards in the distance, which I seemed to think were Polish. That was what I thought. Poland has white bollards with a thick red line around. Some people were thinking this could be Baltics. It certainly did look like that area as well. But I was pretty convinced that those were Polish bollards. It's a good way to tell Poland apart from other similar nations, is that thick red stripe on their bollards. As well as that electricity pole that I just pointed out, that is something you see in Poland. Another good way to tell it apart from the Baltic nations is that sort of pole with the sort of stepladder looking design. You see that in Poland a lot, not in the Baltics though. Round 94, here we had yellow license plates. Architecture seemed to indicate somewhere in the UK, I believe. Actually, no, this was the Netherlands, wasn't it? They can look similar sometimes, especially with the yellow plates, but Netherlands has yellow on the front and the back. The UK just has yellow on the back plates, so that's a good way to tell them apart if you're not sure. There are differences in architecture, I just wasn't sure of those in that round. In this location, I have chat to thank here again. It looked vaguely Baltic to me here, but I just was not sure at all. I believe we spent a long time trying to decide which of the three it would be. A very, very tricky part of the world to be in, especially if you're in a city and not in the middle of nowhere, because the electricity poles aren't as readily apparent, which are some of the best ways to tell them apart. So here we were not too confident, had to take our time and look around. So chat was thinking Lithuania from everything they had seen. I was not too sure at all. Again, I just thought it was somewhere in the Baltics. But I think the thing that gave it away was the pedestrian crossing signs. There are some subtle differences in those across Europe, and even within the Baltic nations. I believe it was the style of pedestrian crossing sign that indicated Lithuania. Just an insane subtle detail. Very, very impressive that people in chat were able to pick that out. As South by said in the chat, the signs in Latvia have thicker borders around the outside, which is perhaps a good thing to look for to decide between Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia. But in the end, we decided Lithuania was good enough. And again, huge thanks to everybody in chat for helping me out with this one. Definitely would have been a struggle for me to get past that on my own. Moving into the final game for this part of the streak, we had a United States-style speed limit sign there, a good way to tell it apart from Canada as well, since Canadian signs will say maximum and then have the speeds in kilometers per hour. Here we again had Australian bollards. This was Generation 2 camera coverage. Landscape seemed southern, and it was indeed Tasmania, I believe. Around 98, we had again Gen 3. Driving on the left, yellow plates, and then the front plate was white, so that indicates that we're going to be in the United Kingdom. Round 99, we were on a motorcycle here, and the language was Vietnamese. So yeah, Vietnam has all motorcycle coverage, which is a good way to tell it apart from other similar countries, as well as the language as well. Here we had yellow plates, language and architecture and road markings seemed Dutch. Again, the yellow plates on both the front and the back. Huge clue for the Netherlands. So with that, we have made it to 100 countries in this streak. Hope you guys enjoyed this first part of the video. Hope it was useful. It is tricky for me to remember some of these locations, but I did my best. Hope you guys enjoyed this, and make sure to stay tuned for parts 2 and 3 coming soon in the next couple of weeks. But until then, guys, thanks for watching, and I will catch you next time.